All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, I'll be doing a preview and prediction for Week 12 contest in the ACC, a crucial contest between Virginia and Duke. Blue Devils 6.5-point home favorites, 59.5 is the total. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2. Getting things started with that Cavs offense on the Duke defense. Disappointing loss for Virginia at home against Wake Forest. Chandler Morris went down early in the game with a hard hit to the head, and that led to them really stalling out the rest of this contest. They only manufactured 9 points. The run game was all right, but they weren't effective enough to be able to overcome the loss of Morris. As backup quarterback Daniel Colleen came in, and he was not very good. Made some mistakes, was not very effective. He was solidly efficient, but I mean, they were just not able to move the ball all that well. And if he plays in this game, it's probably going to be even tougher. I mean, they'll have a week to get him prepared, of course, but Morris is going to have to play for them to have a shot. His dual threat nature is very impressive, but he's a guy that can really sling it from the pocket. They've been really good on third down this year because of his ability to throw the football. This offense, as times went on over about the last month, they've been a little bit more inconsistent. But his skill set on third down allows this offense to really be effective, and they're going to need him to play if they want to stay alive in the hunt for this conference and the playoff. Jamari Taylor, running back, one of the best in the conference, 784 yards, 11 touchdowns, nice physicality, had a bad fumble late in that game against Wake as well. Harrison Whaley's a nice veteran there at RB2. He's been nicely efficient this season. He also has 5 touchdowns. Wasn't much of a factor really in the last couple of weeks, though, but he's an effective player when they need him to be. This is Taylor's backfield for the most part. He's a workhorse for this offense. Can they do enough, though, if Klein has to play at quarterback again? It's going to be the question. I think this is a really good rushing attack. They've been quite sturdy most of the year. Very inconsistent over the last month, though. They're pretty awful against North Carolina and Louisville. Good against Cal, though. They bounced back for 194 and 3 scores. So this is a run game that's up and down. When Morris plays, though, this offense is able to really just move and manufacture a lot of conversions and, again, a lot of effectiveness. The nice trio of pass catchers for this Cavs offense: Trell Harris, Jamal Edrine, Cam Ross. I think they make a very formidable trio there. Cameron Courtney's not a bad player either. The offensive line for this group, I think it's a good one. Mikhail Boley at left tackle and left guard. Noah Josie. These guys are tremendous. One of the best left sides in all of the ACC. Brady Wilson's having a great year at center. Drake Metcalf over at right guard's having a nice year. Then right tackle, a little bit more of a strugglesome area for them. Jack Whitmer not having the greatest of years, but it's a good offensive line. I think it's a physical group. Can they overcome, again, just being one-dimensional? And that's the biggest problem for them is they're good, but they're not good enough to completely dominate the game and take out their opponent if they just need to run the ball. And they're up against a good defensive line. This is a run defense, though, for Duke's not been great. 138 yards per game allowed. 3 straight contests of 150 allowed. They went 1-2 in that stretch, and they beat Clemson by a point and a shootout. So this defense has been on thin ice for the last couple of weeks. I do like what they have up front, though. Wesley Williams and Vin Anthony Jr. are great pass rushers. Aaron Hall on the interior is a nice, productive defensive tackle. The rest of the group, not as great. Guys like Preston Watson, David Anderson, Josiah Green, all respectable players. Green's actually having a pretty underrated year, I'd say, from his interior spot. This is a group at linebacker. It's really battled injuries all year for the Blue Devils. Luke Murgott's really been forced into action this year. He's played respectable ball. Trey Freeman, he's also been having a good year, a multi-year starter for them. Nick Morris just not being around due to injury has been tough for them. I feel like that's a guy that really could have uplifted this unit. And they've really been iffy at the linebacking spot overall for Duke. This is a secondary that's been really underperforming this year. Chandler Rivers is great, but nobody else has really been stepping up. Kamari Robinson's been having a disappointing year. Landon Callahan at the other corner spot's not really been able to provide a whole lot. One of their top safeties, and Terry Moore, has just not been around this year due to injury. I think it's certainly led to a lot of weaknesses. Caleb Weaver, though, having a pretty good year at safety, I'd say. Against the run, though, he's just not very strong. And then Deshaun Stone, on the other hand, really struggles in coverage. So it's just not a great, pairing for what they have at safety. Jaden Francois has really struggled in the slot. I think he's a good run defender, though. But they've had some really big issues when it comes to coverage this year. And if Morris plays, they're going to pick him apart most likely. This is a Duke defense. Very disappointing, but they do have pass rushers and guys that can win. Only 20 sacks, but they are pretty good at generating pressure. Just week after week, they've been playing some tough offenses, and it's been really hard for them to get many stops. Even in that game against Cal in early October, that was a game where their defense was getting throttled early on, and they started to really manufacture a lot of stops, and that really helped them out. So this defense has not been great for Duke and for Virginia. If Morris can play, they're going to have balance all day, and they're pretty good at protecting the ball for the most part. and staying on the field. Only 9 turnovers lost this year, and they're sitting at a third down conversion percentage at about 48%. So great offense for Virginia. Moving to the other side of things, a Group 4 Duke that's coming off a disappointing loss against UConn. Talking about their defense was awful in that game, but the offense was just as bad, which is crazy to say because they did score 34 points and had a chance there late to potentially win it. But Mensa was not himself. Darian Mensa has been having a great year, one of the top quarterbacks in college football coming off his worst game of the year. He had 2 interceptions, only had 2 coming into that game. He went about 6 straight games without a pick. Had 2 of them there. Completed 71%. That was nice. 222 yards, though. Just not able to find big plays like you're accustomed to seeing. His downfield accuracy this year has just been phenomenal. This has been a big play quarterback through and through for this offense, and they just were not like themselves on the road against UConn. Cooper Barquette at receivers had a phenomenal year, 824 yards. Sean Brown, 584 for him. Shamar Hagens, Andre Anthony. It's a pretty nice receiving group that they bring to the table going up against a Virginia pass defense that's been pretty good this year, not having too many bad games through the air. I think they've defended quite well. I just don't think they're all that talented when it comes to the back end. I think these corners are certainly going to be tested against these tougher quarterbacks in pass catching groups. I do love what they have at safety in Devin Neal. He's been a phenomenal asset for them. Jason Prevard having a pretty good year as well in the slot. When it comes to outside corner, Emmanuel Carnley, Donovan Platt, Jordan Robinson, I'm just not that big of a fan of these guys. They're going to be tested out wide. So, I try to keep things in between the numbers, and that could be beneficial for the secondary. Ethan Minter is also having a pretty good year at the other safety spot. Christian Charles is a number 3 rotational player, has been giving him some pretty solid play. So I think Duke has a favorable matchup when it comes to attacking this defense downfield. Putting Virginia in man opportunities is definitely going to be beneficial for them. Duke's also pretty good at running the football. They've had an unsung hero, Nate Shepard, really step up as a freshman this year. He's averaging almost 100 yards per game at running back, 8 touchdowns on the season. Anderson Castle, nice number 2 with 6 scores. He's really physical, nice short yardage guy at 215 pounds. Complimentary run game, pretty solid group for Duke. They had 168 yards last week against UConn, against Georgia Tech and Clemson, though they're pretty weak. And it's totally possible that Virginia can upend them as well. This is a competitive run defense, 113 yards per game allowed. Florida State and NC State really gave them some headaches early on in the year. Last couple weeks, they've been playing respectable ground and pound attacks. And they've played well, so I think they've definitely improved. I guess the jury's still out overall. Don't expect them to get torched by any means here. I like what they have on the defensive line. Mitchell Milton, Daniel Rickert have been pretty impressive guys when it comes to making plays. Fisher K-Mac's a nice defensive end. So they have a nice, sturdy defensive end group. Kazim Moore as well. Jason Hammond on the interior is probably their best guy. The interior defensive line isn't all that great, but again, those edges are pretty deep, and they get some good playmaking from those guys. So pretty happy with that group. Jacob Holmes having a solid year on the interior. Hunter Osborne. So Jameer Carter as well. So it's not the worst group. I think it's a nice area of strength for Virginia. And then in the middle, you have some nice linebackers. Cam Robinson, a big fan of his. He's a great playmaker for this defense. James Jackson alongside him. It's not as consistent. It does give them some quality play. I think for Duke, though, again, they're going to be able to throw the football quite well. The Virginia defense, I think, is more talented than we've seen in the past couple of years. And they've been playing some good football. I mean, over the last month, they've had to create a lot of big plays. Had those turnovers against Louisville that led to a lot of points. Made a stop in overtime. They really had to step up against Washington State and North Carolina. They stopped the Tar Heels, an inch short of losing that game, and then they faced a pretty good Cal offense on the road, and they were able to come up with a couple of interceptions there, 10 total on the year. So I think this is a pretty good defense. They've had to do some heavy lifting because the offense has struggled at times this season. So it's been nice to see Virginia get some nice play out of this defense. But in this matchup, I think the Duke's probably going to be able to throw the football quite well. Leading to the final thoughts and the prediction, this game's going to be interesting because I think Virginia really does have the offense that can contend with Duke here. Is Chandler Morris going to play? I assume he will. If he doesn't, then obviously I think Duke's certainly going to win this one quite easily. I think Morris is going to play overall, and I think Duke's just going to be able to outlast them with this pass game, especially at home. They've been dominant throwing the football downfield. It's been very tough to contain. Duke has not been great on third down the last couple of weeks. Only 6 total conversions over the last 2 games combined. That's usually an area of strength for them. So I think at some point they're going to return to that strength. They've been on a lot of road games. 4 of the last 5 have been played on the road. They had that game against Georgia Tech that they blew, kind of like the Illinois game early on in the season. They've had a lot of opportunities to win games this year, and they've just been incredibly silly when it comes to, honestly, just overall incompetence, penalties, turnovers, all kinds of mistakes in some of these home games. I think in this one, you're going to see them be a little bit more consistent. A lot on the line here. They're still alive in the hunt for the ACC, and this is a big game, and it's going to go a long way in determining that final race. So, Duke, I think, is going to get the job done here. I'm going to pick them to win the game. I think the best bet will be over 59.5. Interesting total. I kind of weighed back and forth on how I wanted to go with that one. So, probably better just not to play this game. But I think if Morris plays, you want to go ahead and hammer that line. 6.5, 7 points. I think it will ultimately come down when Morris's health becomes clear, though. So I think this will be a good game. I think the Duke's going to get the job done, and they're going to stay alive in the hunt for the ACC and effectively knock Virginia out of the hunt. So that's me for today's episode. If you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.